So just interrupting you there, David. Dave, so if that puts a strain, as you said, on economic growth, is that limiting their resources that are available for what frightens a lot of people, their military and global expansion?
It does. I mean, China already spends a huge amount on defence, and of course, being a communist government, so not responsive to the public in the way democracies are, they can take those sorts of choices without facing too much public outcry. But the pie is only so big, and if the pie is stagnating or eventually getting smaller, well, then everything bears that consequence. So their ability to fund ambitious expansion of the Defence Force and their capabilities is going to come under some strain over the next decade or two.
So if that's the case, how then do you answer the question that everybody's asking? Is China a threat or a benefit to Australia in this region, or both?
Look, it's both, Alan. I think we do benefit Australia and many countries by our trading relationship with China, by what we have to sell to them and what we can buy from them. But undoubtedly, they've behaved in a threatening way in the region, not only towards Australia by putting on punitive trade measures, but their actions in places like the South China Sea, the bullying that we've seen of their neighbours, their aggression towards Taiwan, which they consider to be a renegade province. These are not things that aid stability or peace in the Asia-Pacific region, and they're not things that are in Australia's national interests either. I think it's the truth of the international system that they're going to be both over the next few decades, a partner in some respects and an adversary in others.
But the declining population, OK, which accelerates the decline in economic growth, as you said, it used to be double-digit figures. How, therefore, does that put together affect Xi's global ambitions for China?
Well, I think Xi wants to leave with a legacy. He wants to have transformed China's international position within the system. And it would be his judgment that China is probably at its strongest it has been historically, at least over the last 200 years, which is true. It's his judgment that the West is still fundamentally weak and lacking in will and disarrayed, if you like. But he wants to lock in some of those favourable circumstances by creating facts on the ground. Now, whether that's reunification, forcefully or otherwise, with Taiwan, whether that's a Chinese veto, if you like, over shipping in the South China Sea, these sorts of things are what he wants to ensure.
Gee, a veto over shipping in the South China Sea would make a mess of the Australian economy, that's for sure. I mean, just finishing up on China here, so you're saying that their power on the global stage may have peaked, but then you make the corollary to that may well make them one of the more dangerous periods in global affairs. How do you marry those 2 points?
Well, I think when a power sees that its best days are now, or slightly behind them, and historical circumstances, the trajectory is going to be unfavourable in the future, it can often cause you to behave in a more aggressive fashion. I mean, this has been the story of Russia since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Putin is an incredibly aggressive statesman because he's got a shrinking population, an economy that's stagnant, but he wants to ensure that Russia remains a great power, a force to be reckoned with. And so we see him very adventurous on the global stage, intervening in places like Syria, like Iran, and of course with naked aggression in Ukraine. And we could see a situation where China, under Xi Jinping, also wants to lock in its place at the top table. It doesn't want to go into a decline without having to secure some of the assets or the facts on the ground that will ensure a continued development within it.
People listening to you are saying, how do we manage this? We are hopelessly, in defence terms, underprepared, aren't we?
We are. There's a lot we've got to do. We've got to spend more on defence. We've got to have more asymmetric capabilities. These are things like submarines, but also drones and unmanned systems, cyber capabilities. We're never going to be able to be a peer competitor of China. The difference in size is too great. But what we need to be able to do is make any adversary, including China, think twice about taking on our interests because of what we might be able to do for them. Well, that's really the function of defence policy.